Hello everyone, this is our last Meet the Masters before summer break. Today we're talking about J.M.W. Turner. He was a British painter and he is considered a romantic artist. And by romantic, we don't mean the way we use the word right now, even though they're based on the same idea that being romantic is all about emotion and being lovey-dovey and stuff like that. Anyway, so Romanticism was a style of art very strongly emphasizing emotion. Developed towards the end of the 18th century. One of the Romantic painters, Caspar David Friedrich, said, "An artist's feeling is his law." There was also a strong interest in nature, sometimes glorification of nature. And from this time period, we also get the idea of the genius, an artist who's able to produce work that is completely his own, not based on anybody else's, kind of like a create from nothing kind of thing. And to actually copy somebody else's ideas was considered like the worst sin you could commit as an artist. So he was considered a romantic painter. And he was born in London above his dad's barbershop, so didn't come from a high society kind of family. And he kept his Cockney accent all his life, and he just never went for the rich and famous kind of thing. He was kind of a curmudgeon, kind of eccentric, didn't have many friends, never got married, kind of did his own thing. Anyway, his name was Joseph Mallard William Turner. He went by William. And so this is one of his earliest paintings. When he was only 14, he was accepted into the Royal Academy of Art, as he was kind of a child prodigy. And so this is one of his earlier pieces. This is the first one he actually exhibited at the Royal Academy. And it's a Fisherman at Sea, oil on canvas. And you can kind of see that the emotion in that painting, that little boat just kind of dwarfed by the clouds and the ocean. His work is an inspiration for all the Impressionists that came after him, so people like Monet and Degas. And so as we progress through his artwork, you can kind of see how his style actually becomes kind of more of an impression of light, something that the Impressionists studied later. They studied Turner's work. So to create his art, he actually kept very elaborate notebooks where he would do sketches and then use those as models for his paintings that he did in his studio. So here are some of his notebooks. They're just gorgeous. They're pieces of art all by themselves. So at the time Turner created his art, actually landscape art, which is what he mostly does. He has some people in his art, but generally they're dwarfed. They're kind of dwarfed by the landscape, by what surrounds them, the ocean, the mountains, the sea, the clouds. And so he was actually one that elevated landscape art to be a considered high art. When he started, they were like, those landscape papers. The painters who were really esteemed painted like historic scenes, kind of scenes from history. Anyway, so this is actually a historic scene. This is supposed to be Hannibal with his army crossing the Alps to fight the Romans. And you can see there, but they are just kind of crouched down. You can see the fury of the elements, that almost like a tidal wave, that cloud kind of breaking over them. There's an avalanche coming off the mountain, probably it looks like storm blowing in from the right. And so you get the idea that they're really having to fight the elements to get across the Alps here. And something you see in his work is they almost look like watercolors. He did a lot of watercolor work, and he actually used like watercolor approach to his oil paintings. So you have these kind of broad swashes of color that create just kind of this lightness, kind of fluency, and make things look very ephemeral, atmospheric, and soft. So here you have the burning of the House of Lords. So in 1834, the House of Parliament in London caught on fire, and 10,000s of Londoners witnessed the event, as did Turner. And he actually did sketches of the fire at the time, and then turned it into this painting, which is considered one of his masterpieces, as well as a historic record of what happened on that day. So this you can see as his paintings start to mature, the landscape almost like disappears into this wash of light and color, which is just so beautiful, this kind of glow that he creates. So this one's called Rain, Steam, and Speed, and it's about the railway, which was a pretty new invention back then, feat of industrial engineering. And so here you have the swirls of steam, are kind of the sky is kind of rushing in, and you really get the idea that this train is just kind of hurling down the tracks. And so the Great Western Railroad, by the way, which is depicted, still exists. And this one's called Snowstorm, Steamboat Off a Harbor's Mouth. And you can see here it's very much about an impression. And he actually wanted to capture that feeling of being in a storm, of just being scared to death. And he actually got sailors to tie him to the mast of a boat in a storm so that he could firsthand experience the wildness of the storm. And so, yeah, he kind of took things to extremes. He could have died. So this one is considered his absolute masterpiece. It's called The Fighting Temeraire, and this painting was actually voted England's most popular painting. It was bequeathed to the nation by the artist. It was never sold privately, and it depicts a ship that was used to fight in the Napoleonic Wars. It's being towed to a shipyard to be broken up for scrap. And you kind of have the setting sun that kind of symbolizes it's the end of an era, kind of the end of the glory days of the Royal Navy. And this old ship that has just fought so valiantly is now basically going to its death. And so you have this strong emotion in this painting. And this painting actually became part of the British 20-pound notes. You can see the Fighting Temeraire there in the back and Turner's self-portrait in the front. So he's actually on British money. He is Britain's most well-known painter. So he died of cholera in 1851 when he was 76 years old. So he lived to pretty good age there, and he is buried in St. Paul's Cathedral in London, and that's where this statue is from St. Paul's. So let's make some art. All right, so what we're going to do today, we're going to need just a watercolor set. This is just a Crayola watercolor set, kind of a thicker piece of paper. Then I have some salt here. I'm going to use that for some texture. And I have some plastic wrap for texture as well. So our first step is we're just going to try and create like this water in a storm scene. So I'm just going to start picking up some of these blues and just kind of doing like these big wave type patterns. And for the salt paint to work, you want it to be pretty wet. So I'm going to paint kind of a storm here. Then I'm going to maybe get some lighter blue in here. And this is all about the process. You're just going to have fun with this. So I might put in maybe like some darker colors here just to kind of make it storm cloudy, like some browns maybe, kind of make that storm cloud sky. And you can see the colors kind of bleed together and just kind of do these fun things. Maybe some purple, so here some dark purple. And while my paint is still pretty wet here, I'm going to go all the way up to the edge. I kind of like all these funky colors in the sky here, so I'm going to just go with that. So here I have my colors laid in for my sky. Maybe just a little bit more over here. And this is totally up to you. This is just really fun to do because you can, you know, we don't really care that this looks super fancy. This is more about the process. So now I'm going to sprinkle some salt on top, and you'll see that that kind of does fun texture. Mine is kind of a rougher rock salt, but any kind of salt will work. And you can see right there how it's kind of pulling together the paper. the paint on the paper. So now I'm going to work on my wave here. So I'm going to start putting more colors in, like maybe some darker blue-green here. And then put some black down here at the bottom. I just want this to look really stormy, like a really big wave. Again, I'm making this pretty wet. Maybe put some of black in here, or brown, kind of down here at the corners. Kind of make it fade to black here a little bit. Okay, and then I'm going to put some of this blue in here. Make sure I have some really nice, strong swirls. Okay, I like that. And now I'm going to create some more texture. And as you can see, this is pretty wet, by putting on some plastic foil here. Okay, so I just have some plastic wrap, and I'm going to shade this kind of in the wave shape and stick it on top. And just kind of tap it down, and you'll see that that makes kind of a fun texture. So I'm just laying that plastic wrap down. Now leave it on for just a bit here. Okay, so that is step one. So now we're just going to let it sit, and in a little while I'm going to take the plastic off and we'll let it dry, and then we'll go on to the next step. Alright, so here you can kind of see what this painting looks like at this step here. So there you can see the salt texture, how it's doing those fun shapes around the kernels of salt. And then you can see the plastic wrap just sitting on there. I'm going to let that sit on there until it's dry. Okay, and so for my last step, I'm just going to take a Sharpie and put in a tiny little boat here. So I'm going to just draw in a small sailboat here. I'm going to try and make the sails look sort of wind torn maybe. And maybe put a couple little people on there, just little stick figures, just so that they have like Turner's little stick figures in there. And there you go. I'm just going to go ahead and brush all the salt off here. And there is our finished Turner-esque sort of painting. Can't wait to see yours. Go send me a message at starbranchllibrary@adalib.org.